It was the dawn of the third age of mankind, 10 years after the Earth-Minbari War. The Babylon Project was a dream given form. Its goal, to prevent another war by creating a place where humans and aliens could work out their differences peacefully. It's a port of call, home away from home for diplomats, hustlers, entrepreneurs, and wanderers. Humans and aliens wrapped in 2,500,000 tons of spinning metal, all alone in the night. It can be a dangerous place, but it's our last best hope for peace. This is the story of the last of the Babylon stations. The year is 2258. The name of the place is Babylon 5.
Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, Season 6, Chatzylon 5. My name is Allen, and I'm joined by a veritable wizard. It's Magellan.
You will receive the spell.
Wait, that's awesome. Wait, what spell is it? I want it.
This is a spell which will turn you into a man.
Oh, bummer. Can I get the receipt? I might need to return this one.
Yes, all
you.
spells are fully refundable for store credit.
Oh no! I can't get cash. This is the hell we live in, America. This is the world. The world. I always forget that we have other listeners. This is capitalism. This is the show. This is Chatzylon 5, where we talk about Babylon 5. But John, how are you?
I'm groovy, doing okay. I've realized that sleeping and eating breakfast make me happier, so I think I'll do those things more.
I recommend those.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm alive. I'm conscious. I'm a bag of flesh with a soul inside of it sometimes.
Well, yeah, that's something.
I don't mean for that to sound bleak. I think that's just a fact. I built a Lego kit recently. The little Anakin Skywalker battleship thing. It's very cute. Did you know that Legos are just like model kits for kids?
Yeah. Yes. I knew that when I was a kid.
Oh yeah. I didn't realize how expensive they were when I was a kid. This
Yep.
one was a bit of a vanity purchase, yeah.
Yep.
And also didn't realize that they have the best instructions in the business.
Great instructions.
Cuz there's no text. It's all pictures and there's no numbering or anything. It's all just crisp, high resolution, here's the color of the yellow brick that you want, here's how many notches it has on it. And here's where it goes, and it's it's beautiful. I honestly, it's there must be some art to it, to writing a good Lego manual because it's really impressive. But
yeah, my thing with
this one was really simple.
My thing with getting Legos as an adult is all of the things that I liked about them as a kid. I feel like they don't quite do them for me the same way. Like when I was a kid and I built a Lego set, I felt like I'd accomplished something. Because it's found the right pieces, put them in the right place. But I feel like it must be easier than I remember it being, right?
This one definitely was, yes.
And then as a kid, it's if you build a ship or something, then you have a toy for your ship imagination time. But I don't have ship imagination time anymore. And so once I've built the Legos, they've served their purpose entirely. You know what I mean?
God, yeah. As soon as I had built both of the wings and realized the full width of this thing, I was my first anxiety was oh God, where am I putting this? Where is this going to go? Do I just start disassembling this now? I don't want to put this somewhere. This is tacky. God.
Yeah.
Because we have limited space. It's not that we don't have the same imagination we once did, and now we have limited space.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to sound too sad. It's just that's just the realization you have as an adult. But they're fun.
That's why I like the sets that they had where the instructions had instructions for 10 different things that you could build with that set.
Right. You could disassemble it and make something completely different.
Yeah, that was a cool concept to me.
My conclusion with this one was it would be really fun to go halvesies on one, a pretty big one, and then just spend an evening with somebody you love or hang out with and just build a Lego kit together.
It's a fun activity. Yeah. Like building IKEA furniture.
Oh God, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My adult comparison was it's like building Gunpla, but yeah, it's also like building furniture.
Yeah, basically.
Sorry, last thing. Saw an exercise bike on Amazon recently that was like $100-something, and I was like, that's reasonable. And then they were charging $89 to have a man assemble it for you. And the part of me that's like my dad's son was like, no, fuck that. Have another person build this for me for money? Disgusting. I'll build it. And then I looked and it was like 200 plus parts, and I was like, oh, $80, eh? Maybe. Yeah. But what doesn't cost you $80 is this podcast. It's Chatzylon 5.
Yeah,
this week we watched 2 episodes of that show. The first was season 1, episode 7, The War Prayer. And the second one was season 1, episode 8, And the Sky Full of Stars, which is a really weird title to say and to write. I love it, and I know it's a reference to The Gathering, but the way we write our thumbnails is like first episode and second episode. So this one's going to say the War Prayer and the Sky Full of Stars. But I'll make it look nice, I promise.
Okay, I believe you.
Thank you.
We should just start using ampersands.
Oh, I love a good ampersand.
Mm-hmm.
I don't write enough of those.
They're fun to write.
Yeah. Why is it called ampersand? We'll look into this. Maybe we'll find out another. Is there a guy named ampersand?
No, I looked it up once and I totally forget.
And per se.
And. Oh.
And per se, and. Meaning and by itself. Okay. Great. First, we're going to be discussing The War Prayer, which was written by D.C. Fontana.
Yes.
It was directed by Richard Compton. It aired March 9th, 1994, and it takes place from Sunday, April 3rd to Thursday, April 7th of 2258. Nice. Magellan, what happened in The War Prayer?
A racist group is terrorizing aliens on Babylon 5, stabbing and branding them. Tensions are high as the different races on Babylon 5 seek justice and retribution. Meanwhile, Londo has trouble with 2 young Centauri who want to break tradition by ignoring their arranged marriages, and instead marrying for love. This clashes with his commitment to Centauri tradition, and he is forced to reckon with his own moral compass in order to help the 2 lovers. Alan, what did you think of The War Prayer?
Well, to get right into the meat of this,
Yes.
There are some really cool things that this show brings up. A lot of it is tackling this idea of like, what is racism like on a ship like Babylon 5? How are you racist against other cultures in this way? And like, these aren't like, did Earth finally get past its own internal racism and extend that out to other aliens?
Mm.
And why does a belief system like that exist? I feel like it's trying to do that. I don't know how much it succeeds. I think part of the problem is just the racists in this episode, the supremacy group that is killing everyone else, are like not relatable or believable in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that you need to like make your racists like lovable. Like, I don't want that. But like, you know, in real life, racists exist among us all the time, and like for reasons, not for good reasons, but for reasons. And you know, I think it's worth, if you're going to do this, to have your episode and like have those characters explain their point of view a little bit more clearly than these kind of like cartoon bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate that Babylon 5 is making this sort of xenophobia and like Earth first ideology a central theme of the show. I didn't expect that to happen, but I appreciate that they're going there and they're trying that. I agree with you that it felt a little, I don't know what the word is, shallow, I suppose. It could be for a number of reasons. Part of it might just be that like we're not seeing or experiencing Earth ever, and so these debates are kind of detached from the actual, like, just if we were able to see Earth and see how different it is and see the extent to which alien species have begun to inhabit Earth and integrate themselves into Earth society, I think maybe we would feel differently about it, because we would be able to better understand the ways in which these human beings feel displaced. That said, I don't know, man. I mean, there are people like this in our society, And I can't imagine that you feel any more empathy for them than you do for these caricatures, right? I mean, someone who like hates immigrants and thinks that they're stealing our jobs and America first and yada, yada, yada.
True.
I don't know.
It's not like I think that those people. It's more like, racism doesn't always show itself as this like
Sure.
screaming hate crime at each other.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of layers to it, and this is one episode of a long show. But I think it always comes back to, again, like the theme song being, mentioning humans and aliens, and like if we are going to talk about how the show is supposed to be a vision for the future, they need to get past those differences and like make actual steps to progress that, because what this one just seems to do is like, no, but everyone's just like us, and I believe it's Ivanova who, when she captures the guy at the end, says like or no, not Ivanova, when they like arrest her ex, Malcolm, who is a character. He's like, why would you ever work with them? And she's like, everyone I met here is more human than you've ever been, and you wouldn't even understand that.
Yeah.
So like, it's the same exact kind of note as I'm gonna go get drunk with the aliens, but
with
a much more
aliens, yeah.
With the rest of the aliens, yeah, but with like a much more direct charge at a person.
Yeah.
I think the stuff that I really liked though about this episode was watching Sinclair and Garibaldi deal, like having to have a criminal justice system and being able to defend both a group of people that they don't necessarily agree with, and come up with their own solution, and watch the failings of this. Because like, right at the jump, we're introduced to Delenn and Mayan, her friend, and they're just like, oh, I remember when we were young and we danced together and we told stories and we were pals. And then Mayan gets killed by a man with a spinny knife. And she, like, right after the theme song, goes up to the two of them and asks them to figure out what's going on. And they say, we are doing everything we can, Delenn. And then she goes, then you are required to do better, Commander. Much better. It's like, yeah, you don't. It's this distrust in the basic system of justice here that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
That the people, even the ambassadors on here, are like, you guys aren't doing your best here. Like, you think you're doing your best, but like you could clearly do more and actually help us if you tried.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if this show had been made 20 years later in 2014 as opposed to 1994. Would there have been as much like narrative sympathy for Garibaldi and Sinclair? Because I think that the current environment around policing is coming much more from the narrative of characters like Delenn and the rhetoric that Jakar is using when he's sort of riling up the crowd. And he's saying like, these people are not facing punishment because they're human. That's what's happening. And you need to acknowledge that. And I think that message in 1994 was something that was beginning to be said by a wider group of people, but had not really gained the sort of momentum that it now has. So I don't know. It's just, it's interesting to be able to have this window into like people who are telling stories in 1994 and are approaching this theme that is still relevant to our society, but they're kind of placing the emphasis and the sympathy slightly differently than I think we would think to now. And I'm not saying that one version is more or less valid than another. It's just it's a different angle than what I would have expected.
Right. And it's important to always remember that like, this show ran from 94 to like 98. So they never hit, 9/11, and they never hit the point in American culture where we started to like actually have like real people. Some people thought they had real reasons to fear outsiders, and the government took action against outsiders and all of that stuff. So a lot of it is like playfully talking about like, oh, like, racism is bad, and like these people are bad, and we all know that, and we all agree on that. Like, good job. Like, it can, and this is part of why I'm a little critical of it. Is like I kind of want this show to do more than just like pat its liberal viewer base a little bit on the back and actually say something. But again, like, we had that email last week about how there was a lot of conservative sort of like management of the show, and they couldn't just go as far as to say things like that.
Yeah.
I think that even comes back when you talk about Ivanova, and her re-meeting up with Malcolm, and he talks about how like, oh, we used to always hang out between all of the like we would do all this fun stuff between all the sex we were having, and it's like, I have always not read Ivanova as straight from the moment we met her and all of her interactions with Talia and everyone else.
Yeah.
And a lot of this reads like, you know, she says I was a different person back then, and like I don't feel the same way that I used to. And it's so like they're basically saying it. Like they're just coming so close to just outright saying like, I don't like guys like you anymore, or guys anymore.
Right.
And it's just like, you guys can just go like a teen. You're basically there. Just say the words out loud. And I know that's pushing a show that can't do that because of the network that it's on. But it's just like, these people writing this show clearly know what they're doing. They know that this episode is about a real problem and that its characters are certain ways, and they just are trying to get around that in meaningful ways that are it still makes for an interesting episode, you know.
I guess maybe that sort of explains why there is a one-dimensionality to the racism here, or it could explain it. It's like everybody watching this can get behind racism's bad, you know.
Yeah.
Nobody in 1994 is going to be like, bro, actually racism is pretty fire. Mostly because they weren't saying fire yet.
Fire, right.
Yeah, or bro. I understand bro.
Maybe.
And so it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, I question the extent to which it being on a conservative network is something that we can constantly use as an excuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that does help to explain why this is not as precise or as nuanced a societal criticism as we would like, and instead is this kind of boilerplate, like, people are different and it's okay kind of thing.
Right. And, you know, the other benefit of this show being about a bunch of different ambassadors is, like, to talk about the good things that the episode does, we're getting a lot of different perspectives on the failings of the system here. Mm-hmm. We mentioned Jakar earlier in his whole speech to the common people, mostly the Narn, about how like these guys aren't working hard enough. They clearly could, and a lot of that actually feels really prescient and works. Mm-hmm. I'm constantly impressed at this show's ability to have its main characters not agree with each other and not like band together at the end.
Right. Yeah.
Garibaldi threatens Jakar and then puts him under arrest for inciting a riot. Mm-hmm. And no killer has been caught yet. So we have one arrest and no killer caught at all, and the victims are piling up. And it's just like you are watching the failure happen in real time.
Yeah.
But like that's what the show is, and it's like we know Jakar's probably right, but like too bad he's causing a riot. That's dangerous in the short term. Garibaldi is trying to maintain control where he can. So yeah, this ambassador is getting arrested. That's where we're at right now. I don't care that he's a main character on the show.
Because part of the point of the show is that getting along is really hard. Like that. Right. That's the whole premise of this. Is an entire space station was built because these 5 different species, and then whatever myriad other species are subject to them, or within their spheres of influence. All of these species have not been able to find peaceable solutions to their problems. And so, yeah, at the end of the episode, everybody linking arms and being like, we're on the same team, would completely undercut the entire premise of the show.
Totally. Yeah. This is also why I thought the sort of wrap up to the Malcolm being the killer plot and running this like shadow group of camouflaged racist assassins, kind of just ends like super clean. Is basically Sinclair plays the cartoon racist and says like,
yeah, that was also, I think, part of it
great.
That makes it kind of weird.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, I know what they like. Hey, those guys suck, right? And they're like, yeah, holy shit, they do, dude. That's so awesome that you think that like other people are worse than we are. He's like, yeah, I super do, and you should invite me to your meetings and put me on your mailing list. And they're like, this guy's got some good ideas.
Right.
Like it just paints them as like completely foolish.
They're stupid, yeah, to believe him. Yeah, I guess I sort of was underwhelmed by that as well, because there are these like cheesy musical cues every time Sinclair was pretending to be a racist.
Yeah.
And it's like there is something in the fact that Sinclair was involved in a war against the Minbari.
Mm-hmm.
And the second episode touches on this, where he says like something like, from that point forward, whenever I would see a Minbari, I'd have to suppress the urge to strangle them. So he has these like repressed xenophobic feelings. And it really would have been something if this episode just went a little further in exploring those, and in someone being like, hey, Commander, I know that you're just playing around, like you're just trying to trick them, but that when you said that the only good alien is a dead alien, that felt like you were really saying that. And I don't know. And if we just
like, I would like Sinclair. It sounds like you're saying you want what I want, which is for Sinclair to sort of reckon with the fact that like he has totally thought things sort of like that.
Yeah. Yes. And like it dirty his hands a little bit, because then there's the moment where Malcolm puts the alien woman in front of Sinclair and is like, shoot this lady. And Sinclair doesn't have to make a moral choice because the cavalry comes in right at that moment. So he doesn't have to decide what he's going to do or not going to do. And I would have loved to see a moment where Sinclair is given the option to do something bad that's smaller than that. And then he does. And then there's a question of like, did you do that because
Did you like doing that?
Did you like doing that? Is there a part of you that wanted to do that? I don't know. And maybe we'll get some of that later. But it was something that I felt was missing and would have, I think, added more nuance to this story about like the forms that xenophobia and racism can take.
Right. If anything, it's the casting choice of having the first guy that we suspect is the assassin being like what the first Asian guy male that we've seen on the show so far. And you're like, oh, like it's not just like they're not just saying like white men are racist. They're not just saying like people like Malcolm are racist. Like other people of different cultures are also racist.
Yeah.
It's just a human thing. And I almost feel like that is saying a little bit more than this like, check out, I hired a bunch of assassins to kill people who don't look like me, and like, don't you agree that people who aren't like us are bad kind of plot. Because again, and like you said, basically as soon as he brings out the woman, I think that's a Minbari woman, and tells Sinclair to kill him, and then the cavalry arrives, the whole episode is like washing its hands of anything that it would make the characters have to reckon with.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, cavalry's here, we're done, like let's shoot, arrested and tossed in the brig, good job.
I think the other frustrating thing is making the villains these masked, mysterious, invisible people, when really these feelings, or the reason that racism is so powerful, is because it exists in the hearts and minds of everyday people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like super assassins that, like you said, you hired to kill ambassadors. It's like the guy who feels like he lost his job because of XYZ reason, and he's literally seeing like his community in front of him change in certain ways or be displaced in certain ways or whatever it is. That is the thing that we need to draw attention to, not like racist shadow governments or whatever it is. So yeah, I don't know. I think
it's kind of like making your racist just like some alien that doesn't look like like non-humanoid alien, like making them invisible is almost like, oh, racism is like it's just people in the background that you never notice. They're just around hanging out, and it's like, no, they're people. They're real. They exist all the time.
And so those who are viewing this episode don't really have to confront or hold themselves accountable for like, does that exist in me somewhere? No, man. Racists are like invisible and they are assassins. So it's not.
They have like spinny knives. It's fine.
Yeah. anyway, and we're holding this episode to standards that I think are appropriate for a show that was released now. It makes me wonder about what the dialogue around policing and criminal justice and racial equity was like in '94, given that it was shortly after the Rodney King riots. So
I was about to say, right, where does that put us timeline?
Some of that was in the air, but I was like 1 year old, so I don't, not even 1, so I don't really have a sense for what the like zeitgeist around those topics was at the time.
Right. And just to kind of put a capper on like all of that plot line, there's some cool trivia, I guess, about that I didn't pick up on that I found on the Lurker's Guide. Mainly, so the group that the racist group is called the Homeguard, which is kind of a cool name.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their whole plot that Malcolm describes to Sinclair and Ivanova is they're going. It's not just on Babylon 5, but they're planning to assassinate aliens all over the Earth Alliance. So like their solution is like, if we kill all of the aliens in power, then we just win. And that seems like a really bad plan. Like it just doesn't seem very well thought out.
Right.
But then also they mentioned that like, you know, one of those scenes where Sinclair is like really brusque and callous about like, oh, like let that girl go to prison. I don't care, because he's pretending to be the racist. He does it in front of Delenn and a bunch of other representatives. And, like, he never tells them, like, hey, guys, I was just goofing around.
Yep.
So, like, they have no reason to think that he doesn't hold those views right now, necessarily. So it's entirely possible that stuff like that can come back. Also, just, like, complete nothing moment. Sinclair decides to consult his favorite alien on the ship, Kosh, in this episode. And I'm starting to find it really funny how little we ever hear or learn about Kosh.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he's just watching on like a TV screen, like a bunch of like images of Earth, like an ocean and like a jungle and all this stuff. And Sinclair's like, what are you doing? And he's like, studying. And he's like, why? And then he gets no answer. What are you studying, Kosh? No answer. It's like, what? Give me anything. Give me anything about Kosh, you guys, please. Because they even talk about the gathering in this episode, like, openly. He suggests that, like, you know, Dr. Kyle was the only other person that was on the ship that had seen what was inside of Kosh. And, like, the other telepath, whose name I don't remember, was also on the ship, and she got kicked off at the same time. Potential connection? And it's like, wait, hold. Like, we are talking... Like, I know the gathering is canon, and, like, it matters, but, like, I didn't think that the cast changes were going to have, like, in-universe repercussions. So I think that stuff's all kind of like interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
And then like I wanted to save it because I really, really deeply loved it. But there is a whole B plot in this episode about our boy Londo.
Can we just one thing real quick?
Oh, sure, please.
With the A plot. Just everybody take the ceremonial drink. For the fact that one of the side plots, or one of the plots in this episode, was based on somebody interacting with a former lover. Just real quickly. Drink deep from your flagons in celebration of that. Yep. And we can
enjoy.
We can move on.
Yeah, Ivanova in her dress, her terrible dress with her bad hair, and she's like, I'm dating a man again. It's like, this is terrible.
She's like laughing, and it's like, what is happening?
I don't want any of this. No, thank you. But yeah, so Londo is dealing with Veer's cousin and his girlfriend, who come on the ship. It's so, we learn so much about Londo in this, and it's like it's profoundly good to me. I
agree.
I found myself almost crying at the moment about forgetting how like the whole shoes are too tight, but it doesn't matter because I forgot how to dance. You can do it, Babylon 5. You can say stuff about tradition and how we differ ourselves from the past. And how we try to live our lives, and how what happens when we get older. Yeah. Like Londo, while he is so often the comedic relief, is a deeply, deeply sad person. He carries in his room. He has a 3-pronged photo thing of his 3 ex-wives, and he calls them pestilence, famine, and death. And that's hilarious because it's like, oh, that's cute. Like, you know, the old ball and chain. Like we're suggesting that like he hates his ex-wives. But, like, he's very lonely, and he feels like when he sees these lovers, and they're like, we don't care about tradition, he's like, no, but tradition's all we have. And I think it's like Delenn who's like, no, the reason you think tradition's all you have is because you tried the other way and it didn't work out for you. And now you're bitter and you're old and it's like not working out anymore.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think what's at the core of it is he feels cheated by the fact that he chose to devote his life to tradition and he regrets it. Like he wishes that he had had the strength to decide that he wanted to live his life based on love and based on what he wanted. And now he's looking back and he's like, fuck, I'm going to be dead sooner rather than later. And what do I have to show for it?
Right.
It's the same. It's another angle on the themes that we saw in, what was that episode called with, what's her face? Adira. What was that episode called? Born to the Purple?
Yes, Born to the Purple.
Yeah. It's similar themes that we saw in Born to the Purple where he feels kind of trapped in this vaunted? Is that a word?
Yeah.
Cool. This vaunted,
like put on a high position, sick
position that he holds. Like he's a bird in a gilded cage kind of thing. And that's my favorite theme that the show has presented to me. I cannot get enough of that. It's like the same thing, kind of expressed in a different way. But I'm just so hungry for it. I just want every episode to be about Londo and how he's old and sad and he wants to be loved.
Die alone.
Yeah.
He just wants,
Oh, give me some of that.
And like it means that we get good Veer moments too, because Veer is like, "Hey, Londo," or "Hey, and with something Mollari, I disagree with you." And I was like, "Oh my god, Veer!" Like this, like goofy, awkward dude opened a conversation by being like, "Hey, that thing you said about like my cousin and his like girlfriend." You're wrong. You're wrong, and you know you're wrong, and like you're gonna he's basically part of the people who say like the reason you're saying this is because it didn't work out for you. You don't actually think that this is a bad idea,
right? You as a part of the old guard of this society want everyone else to suffer the way that you suffered because otherwise you feel like your suffering was meaningless because it was.
Right. Delenn has the line, "All living things are defined by their capacity for love." And Londo is pissed about that. He's like, "No, that's stupid. That's a terror. That's not even a true thing." And it's like, "No, you know it is, Londo. Like you're just broken, man. You're just completely. The world has stepped on you for so long, and all you need is somebody who truly loves you." Like again, yeah, between like Adira and that whole situation and his like recommitment to not only his commitment to the Centauri tradition, but the fact that it has rejected him.
Yeah.
And that we have seen more than once now that like the Centauri government does not see him as like the high member of the government that he's trying to be. As they're just kind of like, well, he's an ambassador that we throw on this ship that's probably going to die in a year. Like he has nothing. And this all concludes in this amazing line that I had to like pause and think about and read about and like read articles about this because this is like one of the most quoted lines of the whole show.
Oh, really?
He says he's telling Veer about a story that when he was a kid he saw his dad crying after work, and he said, "Father, what's wrong?" And his dad said, "My shoes are too tight, but it doesn't matter because I have forgotten how to dance." It's like these are lines you write books about. Like this is it. Like because it encapsulates everything about his character so far. It's this little cute, like it makes you smile and then it makes you cry at the same time, which is like my favorite kind of quote. And it's all about the way I read it, at least, was it's sort of like living up to the expectations set for you and trying to be somebody that you're not, and then forgetting how to just exist and live your life and be happy as a result. Is you're so used to putting on the face and doing the song and dance and making the shoes look good that you forgot that you're at a dance. It's like, oh,
right. The way that I sort of think about it is like you put in all this work to get the things that are supposed to be associated with like what you want, and then somewhere along the way it becomes less about what you want and more about the things, right?
Exactly.
So he somewhere in his life had passions for like love and for his society and for making things better, and for connecting with people. And then what that turned into is like having the marriage and having the title. And now he has had the marriages and he's had the title, and the passion and the care are not part of that anymore. And that's what he's missing, and that's what he realized actually mattered.
Right. It's even like an important message to remember as an adult watching this now, of like, you could get all the things you want in the world. You could get the job you want and the girls that you want and the money that you want, and still be deeply unhappy and deeply alone. Because like at the end of the day, those aren't things that are gonna, you know, keep you up going on your own. You know, you need to dance. You don't just need the shoes. You need the dance. Yeah. It's perfect.
And also the other thing that's great about it is like, you don't need shoes to dance.
Right. You don't need shoes. And sometimes it's nicer to dance without shoes.
At some point you convinced yourself that you needed shoes to dance, but you don't.
You didn't even need that.
And by the time that you realize that you don't need them anymore, it's too late.
The dance is over and people are walking out. Yeah, exactly. DC Fontana, you did great. And the rest of the writing team, extremely good work. Keep it up. I want more of this. Just fuck me up, fam. Like, honestly. Oh, she also wrote on Star Trek. All right, this makes sense. Oh, nice. She worked on original series. Holy shit. And like DS9, all that. Wow, look at that.
Nice.
Very cool. Do you have any stray notes on the War Prayer?
My phone died today, so I have like no notes on the next one, and I have a couple on this one. Let's see. So there was this weird like side note at the beginning where Garibaldi was passive aggressively getting mad at Ivanova for like secretly growing coffee in the hydroponics.
Oh yeah,
area.
hydroponic stuff. Yeah.
But did that amount to anything or matter?
I feel like it was mentioned one more time. Like one of the Minbari was like, "Oh, your like hydroponic system is really cool," and I don't remember anything else about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense that they have hydroponics on. That's just, and to me, I read that as like, oh, that's cool to know that that's how they grow food. Like it's kind of answering that question of like, how do we get food on the ship?
Right.
Because it doesn't seem like this world is high enough tech to just like make synthetic food, and we've never seen anyone eat on this show, I don't think. Well, no, that's not true. Yes, we have. We've seen like alien food. But like what does like how do you make a burger, or like how do you make, you know, plants and vegetables and stuff? Did you have anything else?
Well, no. That also just reinforces this this trend of Ivanova seeming really straight-laced, but continuing to like break the rules for her own personal gain, like calling her dad secretly and growing her own coffee. I'm into that. I think that's you don't normally see that in like the straight-laced character, that they make exceptions for themselves, and that feels real to me.
Right, she's cool. She's not just the straight-laced person. Like she's got
she's like a real person. Yeah.
Exactly. So it kind of works in a way to like flesh that idea out.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got.
I don't have any notes that I didn't mention. That's kind of why I was bouncing around a lot, was I was just hitting all my notes. But I do have an email this week from our buddy Dan.
Okay.
And I'm gonna give this one a little skimmy, because some of it is like getting really deep into the weeds of some stuff that we talked about. But
sure.
He opens and says, "Hey, we hear from Dax, and he's in the same hole that I'm in," which is good. He says there is so much going on behind the scenes of the show. It's all fascinating, and he doesn't know if there has been a show that was as transparent about letting people see how the sausage gets made, if you want to go looking for that stuff. Problem is that most of it's tied up in huge spoilers, so it's something to look back at when you have watched more of the show, or talk to someone who can, you know, navigate the spoilers for you. What's interesting, he says, is that some of our insights make him cackle, because a lot of the issues that we bring up are the ones that were being brought up to JMS back in the day. He spent an impressive amount of time addressing these concerns, which I always appreciated, but my view has always been that if your audience didn't get the intended message of your episode, then you can't claim that it worked. The fact that fresh eyes still see these problems in 2018 says all I need to say. In this case, I'm addressing how silly and thematically odd it was to have that ending of the Parliament of Dreams with the line of various religious beliefs. So, like, people thought that was dumb at the time. It was like, hey, buddy, like, why'd you write this?
Right.
To give you an idea about how thematically deep the show can go, you should have seen the dissection of Delenne's religious ceremony. The word, and I'm not going to go into, this is the part that's like really long, but she says the words she spoke as she handed each person a fruit were a foreshadowing of their fates. Like from birth, Londo gets a fruit. Through death and renewal, Vir gets a fruit. You must put aside old things for Garibaldi. It's like, oh shit. It's one of those little things that you get to go back at. We got little nuggets.
Nice. I'm into that.
And then he concludes, as a general thought he has, we have not really reached the point where the show hooked him. That took quite a while. The CG was sketchy. The fistfights were terrible. The acting was wildly uneven, which I kind of disagree with, but I know there are certain characters who I'm just like, what do you, like we talk about Sinclair, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing sometimes?
Yeah.
But these early episodes seem to promise something that's hard to identify, which I definitely agree with this one and the second one, where it's like, you guys are doing something. I see it. As I rewatch the show with you, I look back on these early episodes and as the show's spice. While it's not necessarily great on its own, it flavors the rest of the show in an interesting way that adds something wonderful to what comes later. Very cool.
Awesome.
He also brings a brief PS, being that he was surprised that me, as a huge Lost fan, I didn't address the fact that Mira Furlan, who plays Delenn, was also Danielle Rousseau in Lost. Don't get me started about Danielle Rousseau. I like her. I watched season 1 of Lost like 3 years ago, all the way through with a podcast, and I was like, damn. Season 1 of Lost is good.
Danielle.
Damn, Danielle Rousseau, you're too good. Also, yeah, she's in makeup, so I don't recognize her. Apparently, I want to see what she looked like at the time, because in Lost, basically, she's this like, she initially comes off as this like wild woman, this like French woman who lives in the woods and like does weird shit with a sniper rifle, and like no one knows what's her deal, but she's like steals a baby. And it's a whole thing. Don't steal babies. But yeah, that is what we got, and now we're going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back to discuss And the Sky Full of Stars.
Hello and welcome back to Chatzylon 5. The second episode we watched this week was Season 1, Episode 8, And the Sky Full of Stars. It was written by J. Michael Straczynski, directed by Janet Greek. It aired on March 16th, 1994, and it takes place on Monday, April 11th through Wednesday, April 13th of 2258. Alan, what happened in And the Sky Full of Stars?
So mouthy, so word. Mouthy's not the word. So wordy. Well, John, Sinclair is kidnapped and interrogated by two men determined to prove that he betrayed Earth during the Battle of the Line. While the rest of the crew searches for him, Sinclair's mind is probed by one of the men, who suspects that he was used to broker a secret deal between the Centauri and the humans, which led to a false peace and the creation of the Babylon Project. It's like Magellan. What did you think of this episode?
It's got some implications, my dude. It's got some implications. We'll dig into the meat of that in a moment. In terms of the experience of like watching the episode, I don't know. I found it I was watching it on the train, so it's always not ideal, but I'm a busy guy. So sometimes that has to be what I'm doing. So I kind of felt detached from the viewing experience of it. And that made it hard for me to tell whether it was actually an engaging episode or not, like minute to minute. I also think that any episode that hinges on like it being fully focused on Sinclair is going to therefore constantly bring up my feelings of like, what is this guy going for with this character? That said, there were moments that I thought were particularly strong in his performance. Especially that shot where he's like, it's from under him and his face is half darkened, and he's talking about like Mitchell and the boys and how they're all dead. And it's like, oh yeah, this is real. This is the real deal. So it wasn't like the most amazing episode watching it, but it definitely cracks open some things that I think are going to be big, and I'm glad that we've kind of made some movement in the Sinclair plot.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I guess partly like knowing that Sinclair isn't here for the whole show, the more I see him like escalate in this whole plot about the mystery of the Grey Council and what happened in the Earth Bar War, the more I am like, oh, this guy could just like finally do something or realize something and then be dead. Like his arc he doesn't have to like learn something or go anywhere. This can all culminate in us learning something as the viewer, and then him being not on the show anymore, and that can work. I think what I like though about the implications of this episode is that it still works. It's not just we mentioned Lost during the email, but like the thing a lot of people have problems with Lost sort of like plot reveals is that they didn't always tie back into the themes of the show. It's like, yeah, this was a government conspiracy. So what? Like, that's cool. This show isn't about like not trusting the government at all. I think Babylon 5 is a lot of it ends up being a show about like how did all of these aliens and humans get together, and like how did we get to the point where we can make a ship and live on it 24/7 and not kill each other, and how did we get through this war? Like with two of the groups on this ship were like in a full-on war with each other, and then they just kind of ended suddenly. And like how does like answering those questions is part of what the show is about. So having us get this like potential reveal of like, oh, maybe, just maybe, all of this is fake. Maybe all of this is artifice, just like everything is artificial. And maybe the foundations of what started the Babylon Project were based on, greed or, what the Minbari trying to make a play for the rest of the galaxy. Like maybe they are evil psychics. Honestly, man, if anything, this episode kind of makes me think like this could justify xenophobia better than anything anyone says in the last episode.
Right.
Is like, if this was confirmed to be true, and it's not, we should point out that like the smart thing they do is, this episode definitely says that like something about this has to be fucky or weird, but what they're saying here explicitly, maybe it's not right. Is there still so much potential? It's like, wait, what does that mean? And if it's true that the Minbari, tricked Earth into forming this alliance so that they could sneak their way into taking over the rest of the world, then like, how do we trust any Minbari? How do we trust Delenn? I thought we liked Delenn. Like, this thing that she said in the past was all a big lie. Because, they do all this stuff, and they have all these reveals, and then the end of the episode, and Delenn is like talking to Sinclair, and he's like, hey, I remember you from something. And she's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And then she gets a guy being like, hey, if that dude finds out about the secret that we are hiding from him, you have to kill him. And it's like, oh my god, I really hope this isn't true. I thought we liked Delenn. Don't do it. It's Babylon 5.
Yeah. It really, it complicates the central topic of the show, because up to this point, the show's been, hey, peace, man. We love peace, but it's tough, right?
Yeah.
So let's try to figure it out. And now this episode is saying, but what if peace is like a scheme?
Right.
Is there such thing as a neutral peace in which nobody is angling to use it in order to dismantle other societies? Like, is it ever possible for us to just be like, guys, stop.
Right.
It's okay. Let's just get along. It's making me anxious in a way that I think is good. Anyway, so
yeah, it sets up a lot of like big questions, and we have like little scenes here and there that make us think like, oh no, but these are still the people you like. Like Dr. Franklin and Delenn have a conversation. Like he brings her into the medical wing because he wants to get an analysis on like a standard Minbari in good health, so that he has a baseline to work from, which is interesting. And they have this back and forth about like, what did you do in the Earth Minbari War? And he says that he was a hitchhiker and he was a doctor, but he like went from place to place and didn't really participate. He wasn't in any faction because he didn't believe in war, because he's the kind of person that values he values life over death. And I make that distinction because the humans, the Earth Alliance, wanted his notes on the Minbari so that they could make weapons and like, biological, chemical weapons. And he destroyed his own notes because he said, I respect all life. And it's like, yeah, Dr. Franklin's an ally. Hell yeah. Like, okay. And then you're like, all right, so we have our, like, other, like, another, the only time we ever see things about Dr. Franklin is the show telling us that he's cool. And then he turns it around. He's like, all right, Dylan, now it's time for you to tell me why you're cool.
Yeah, what was your whole deal? What were you doing?
And she's like, yeah, like, come on, make this, like, he looks at the audience and goes, like, make them like you, you know, come on, what did you do during the Earth and Barry War? Probably some nice stuff, right? And she's like, no, I won't answer that. I did nothing. I was, like, around. It was weird. I don't know. And then they just kind of go past it, and you're like, no, Delenn, I need something. Like, I can't tell who I want, more. I want backstory for more. Is it Kosh or is it Delenn? Because, like, Kosh is just this weird booger toilet man who just says dumb nonsense, cryptic shit. And then Delenn is like, you're clearly important and you clearly did some sketchy shit, but just say it. Tell someone. It's driving me up the wall in a really good way. Like, these are the questions that I'm like, I hope the show teases us out for a very long time because I love it. Like, I think having this whole dream, I think the dream sequence stuff is cool too. Getting all of this, like, Sinclair in his pajamas and he's seeing his past happen and talking about that guy. What was his name again? The other guy that was with him in the war?
Mitchell.
It's like, Mitchell, no, don't die. And he keeps watching his best, like, friend die, and then he blacks out and he doesn't know what happened when he blacked out. And what's cool about the villain, I guess, is he starts out as just like, Sinclair, you gotta tell me what you saw. What did you see? And, like, hitting him and, like, scaring him. And they play with the dream stuff in a fun way. Like, Garibaldi shows up in Sinclair's dream. He's like, oh, Garibaldi, you're finally here. And he's like, Commander, oh, gets shot. And then the guy's like, check this out. I can do that as much as I want. And Commander, just, like, kills him over. Like, he's like, I can kill him as much as I want. I can just keep bringing him in the room and repeating this. That must have been very fun for the guy playing Garibaldi to just get to do that over and over. Because they're all different takes. It's like him going, Commander. It's a fun word to say. You know, it's mostly the interrogator and Sinclair in this thing, but what makes the interrogator cool is that by the end he's like, no, like, this is not just because I'm mean. You need to know what happened in your head, and I want to help you figure it out. I'm not just trying to hurt you.
Right.
Don't think it's weird that you were gone for, like, a day and then you woke up and the war was over? You don't think that was weird or, like, kind of strange? You don't want to figure that out? So,
yeah,
like,
it's interesting to see how this episode shifts who the antagonist is over the course of it, because at first it's this guy, because he thinks that Sinclair purposefully betrayed humanity.
Yeah.
And then as he's in his mind more, he realizes, oh no, this guy is actually missing memories, which is scarier and more concretely confirms the thing that I'm afraid of, which is that someone dug around in his brain and planted something or convinced him of something or who knows what. And so then the antagonist shifts from him to Delenn and to whatever the heck happened to Sinclair. So I appreciated that this guy, in contrast with the episode we just saw, was not a kind of cartoonish embodiment of Earth First and xenophobia, but was instead this guy who's like, we have to know for our security, because at some point at the end of the war, they just stopped when they were winning. And for 10 years, Earth has been freaking out about that and has had no idea why that happened. And that fact really helped me to better understand why this is a lingering issue and why those things are coming to fruition on Earth, because people are just suspicious of the fact that they weren't utterly destroyed.
And they should be. Again, this is, like, such a better, like, justification for people's, like, xenophobia than anything else. Is like, this guy right here leads Babylon 5, which is a ship and an alliance formed by, like, humans and aliens to work together. If this guy doesn't know what led to that being created, then, like, what are we doing here? It's like disassembling the whole show and being like, if the guy who's running this doesn't know why he's running it, then like, what is any of this? What is this ship? Why did we start this? What was the actual purpose of this? It's like it's like terrifying in a really cool way. Like, I don't know. I love long-term mysteries and seeing Sinclair start to doubt himself. I think to briefly recall back to Farscape, like all the stuff about like John Crane having the chip in his head and then like having all these powers in his head, at its worst felt like they were just giving John Crane a like MacGuffin superpower or like a MacGuffin like item that's in his brain. Like if we get his brain, we win the war. But it also led to him like rethinking like what is the purpose of all the war and like why do all these people want this from me? And this is like making me like Sinclair a lot more because it's like, oh shit, if he had this whole answer somewhere buried deep in his head, then it is worth it for him to figure it out because clearly he was there when something happened.
Right.
I don't know. And like, yeah, the Mitchell stuff happens. We see him die, and then it turns out he didn't die. He ejected his parachute at the last second, so maybe Mitchell's alive or something.
No, I think he tried to, but he
tried to
killed.
and it didn't. Yes.
I mean, maybe we'll find out that he is, but I don't know.
Right. And I think the last thing that the guy says, and there is not a name for the guy. I checked. The wiki refers to him as Knight 2, like KNIGHT 2. And there's Knight 1 because at the end he's like Sinclair's like, I never got your name. He's like, I don't know. My brain got turned into microwave baloney. So Sinclair, maybe we're both still inside. And it's like, what does that mean? And he's like, I don't know. You're getting arrested for life. There's always someone gets arrested at the end of every episode of the show, I swear. I guess that's like what you do. Like you don't want to like kill the bad guy in this show because this is like a peaceful ship, but I'm always just like, where are they putting everyone? But anyways, yeah, so he says that they have all these crazy conspiracies that we're setting up. We don't know what's true or not. We know that Delenn is in fact super duper hiding something through the Grey Council and the Minbari government. We don't know what it is. And that's where we're at with this episode.
Yeah.
You said you don't have stray notes because you weren't able to take notes on this episode.
Died, yeah.
So I have a decent number of stray notes.
All right, hit me.
Whap! That's me hitting you. Really loved Sinclair's fun war pajamas when he's like in his dreams. Yeah. And he's just like wearing fun because he's like sleeping and then he wakes up and in his dream he's like calling in the ship and nobody answers and he's like, "We're computer," and then the creepy guy is like, "I'm the Dream Lord here." Really important. I really wanted us to like go back and pause on this, but apparently someone on the wiki did. Garibaldi is reading a newspaper, and we see like most of the headlines on the newspaper. I'm just gonna read a couple of these real quickly. In sports news, zero-G tennis results inside. Zero-G tennis, very good. Is there someone living in hyperspace? Homeguard leader convicted. Jacob Lester found guilty in attack on Minbari embassy. That's probably something. Narns settle Ragesh 3 controversy, which is a fun reference to the pilot. EA president promises balanced budget by 2260. I think that's Earth Alliance.
Yeah, Earth Alliance.
Or Electronic Arts. It's EA Sports. It's in the budget. Psy-Corps are in a... This one was interesting to me. Psy-Corps are in an election tangle. It says something about, did Psy-Corps violate its charter by endorsing a vice president? Which, who knows where that's going. San Diego still considered too radioactive for occupancy. Nah. Extremely good.
Nah.
San Diego struck by the American state's first act of nuclear terrorism over 100 years ago. Still uninhabitable for the next 300 years. R.I.P.
Oh my God.
Everyone I know from San Diego is hearing that and just cackling. Like, good. Yeah. Pros and cons of interspecies mating. Very good. Okay. There's a special, like, little opinion piece. Copyright trial continues in Book Zap Flap. Books downloaded directly into Brain. Who owns them? That's fantastic. They talk about Napster in 1994. New binary star discovered. And then a bunch of like horoscopes, lotteries, holocomics, and all that stuff. That's really fun. I love. They showed us the whole newspaper basically. Like they're clearly asking people to like go back and pause and enjoy that little that kind of stuff.
That's fun. I like that.
Yeah. There was a moment when they first bring Sinclair into the mind prison where they say his birthday and they confirm that he is in fact 39 years old. So I guess keep that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about Mr. Sinclair.
Yeah. Also, he was born on Mars.
He was born on Mars, yeah.
Yeah.
Being 39 in 2258 means you were born in what, the 2200s? So like you were born a future person, which is kind of fun. It's not like it's far enough in the future that we would never meet any of these people, but we probably would in our lifetimes, like see them born, I guess.
No, not those people.
22. Oh no, 22. No, you're right. Sorry, I forgot how numbers work. I really liked I still think the CG is terrible in this show, like terrible. But the Minbari ships in the like Earth Minbari War flashbacks are very cool. They're kind of like elongated, like they look like a Hershey's, like a long Hershey's Kiss almost. And I want to see more of those. I want to see more of those? I never know. I just kind of want to see them in still motion and not in stillness and not motion. Because God, the CG on the show is not very good. No, I'm looking at pictures now. They kind of look more like fish. They like the fish with the wings.
Mm-hmm.
What are the fish with the wings called, Magellan?
Wingfish.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Oh, Sinclair. There's a shot where Sinclair, and I was gonna make this the thumbnail, but there's like such a beautiful shot from the first one that I had to take. When Sinclair is having his mind like broken, and they just have a shot where they zoom in on the actor's face, and he's just going like, he's just like squeezing his face, and it's like it looks so freaking bad. It's like, guys. They called back to the moment in another episode where Delenn said there is a hole in your mind. Like, she clearly knows, everyone knows there's something going on. That was kind of a fun reference. And yeah, and then I just said I'm really surprised that we have like potentially cracked open this show's whole premise. That's very cool. So that's what we have for And the Sky Full of Stars. An interesting episode. Not too much right now though, because it's more setup than it is anything else. It's table setting, but
yeah. Excited to see where it goes.
Totally. John, speaking of where things go, could you please tell me what we're watching next week on Chatzylon 5?
I certainly can. Next week, we're watching the next 2 episodes of Babylon 5. First, we're watching Season 1, Episode 9, Deathwalker, and then Season 1, Episode 10, Believers. Deathwalker, a war criminal whose experiments on sentient beings have led to an immortality serum, comes to Babylon 5. Cool. And then Believers, an alien family refuses surgery to save their dying child.
My favorite episode of House MD.
So it seems like we're kind of in that mid-season thing of the week lull after we just got a huge plot revelation. And I guess we'll be there for a little bit, but that could be okay.
Yeah, I think I definitely like the middling episodes of Babylon 5 more than I have other shows that we watched. I also just feel like this is the first week where I was like, I kind of felt like we're living it. I was just like, oh, Babylon 5 is the show that I watch now. It's like it's gonna always be the show that I watch, and I had like a very a validating moment of like, yeah, this is it. This is the situation. I get to see these characters make fools of themselves every 7 days, and it's a great time. But yeah, so if you enjoy our show and you want to help us out, you can follow us on the internet. We are at Chatspod on Twitter, CHATZBOD. You can email us at chatspod@gmail.com if you'd like to have your email read or not. You can send things over there. And you can obviously rate us and subscribe on iTunes. That'll help us get the word out there. And finally, if you would like to support the show financially, you can check out patreon.com/chatspod. That, dear listener, is where we are putting some premium content for you, where at $2 a month, you get a commentary of a film every month. And then at $5 a month, every 2 weeks approximately, you get us hanging out late at night, getting real, getting spicy, not wearing pants, sometimes. Chats nights. Check it out. Magellan, it's time for Chatsums. Here's the thing. We don't do plugs here at Chats. We do Chatsums. That's where we give you a little snack, a little thing to nibble on in the next 7 days, to think about, to do, to try, to experience. Magellan, what is your Chatsum for the week?
Well, I've always been a lover of podcasts since like high school, and that's a big reason why we're doing this, is because both of us are big fans of podcasts.
Indeed.
And at different times I've had kind of like different favorites. And I don't know. Lately it's been hard for me to stay up to date on all the shows that I like or shows that I've liked before. But there are two that I've just had a lot of casual fun with lately. And so if people are looking for that sort of thing, they can check them out. One is called Doughboys, which maybe I've mentioned on chats before. And I'm sure a lot of people know about it. But it's these two guys who do reviews of chain restaurants. So they'll do like an episode on Burger King, and they'll go to Burger King with a guest and review things from the menu. And it's just like, it's such a simple idea that you'd think that somebody would have come up with it, but nobody else did, and they did, and it's a really fun show. Mm-hmm. And the other show is Your Kickstarter Sucks, which again is just like two guys reading really bad Kickstarters and making fun of them. And if you're looking for a laugh and something nice and easy and breezy, you should check out one of those two shows. Alan, what's your chatsome?
Continuing my tradition of trying to save the listener some cashola. I don't have a podcast this week, but I would recommend trying out, just in general, things that you either usually do by yourself or with other people the other way around. So like going to the movies by yourself, going to a museum with people or by yourself, different things like that, because it's really weird how different you view media and art when you're with people versus like in a social environment versus completely by yourself. And like, I think we often focus too much on, like, if I'm in a group of people and I'm at a movie, I'm constantly thinking about like, what did we all think of this movie? And like, how are we going to talk about it when we get out of here? And like, what are we going to eat? And like, there was a point in high school where I went and saw, like, I would spend like a couple months just like going to the movies by myself, because I was just like, I hadn't really like formed a good friend group yet, and I really wanted to see The Book of Eli and also Alice in Wonderland. So I was like, hell yeah, I'll go watch these in the theater at 3:00 on a Tuesday. And I don't think that's that weird, listener. So try that. Special shout outs to museums, though. I'm actually hoping to go to this week to the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, because they have this new exhibit, which I guess if you're in the area, this is also a recommendation. But it's a propaganda postcards exhibit. So like people in the early 20th century sending postcards back and forth to each other that like had different, either like, pro-communist propaganda or pro-capitalist propaganda. The exhibit is called The Art of Influence: Propaganda Postcards from the Era of World Wars. It's pretty cheap to get in. If you have a student ID, I think you can get into for free to most museums. Just give it a shot. I saw a video recently that made me really sad, because it was about how like they, like, the way museums are surviving now is they have like exhibits that are just designed for people to take photos with. And that made me really sad, because they were like, if this isn't like Instagram worthy, then like no one's going to go see this. And like, hey, I got to say, I went to I didn't go with you, but I went to the Harvard Museum of Natural History recently. And it was just like, here are a bunch of glass cases with old things in them. It was very like rigid. And I'm like, this is still really cool. So give that a little look.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Chatzylon 5. Peace.